It's that time of the week. Yes, it's time for the Creator Town Hall here on Studio Live today, brought to you by BandLab. Yes, if you are a creator and you want to share with other creators, you want to create in your browser or on your mobile device, and you want to master your music and you want to share it with a whole bunch of folks, yeah, BandLab's a really cool option. We'll talk a little more about BandLab later in the show. Coming up today, man, we've got some cool topics and we've got a cool guest as well. We'll be talking about singles and albums. Are albums still a relevant thing? We'll be talking subscriptions. We'll be talking whether lyrics or music come first. How much YouTube is too much YouTube? Yeah, that one's going to cut a little bit deep with a lot of people, as well as going off the grid and a whole lot more here. We've got too many topics to talk about. So why don't we just invite our guest here right now? And that is the one, the only, Mr. Thomas Christ. How are you today, Thomas?
I am great. How about you, Pete?
I'm doing exceptionally well, my friend. It's great to have you back on the show. It's been too long between drinks. I know I've been doing this show at a weird time for our American and Canadian friends, so it's good to have you back in the mix again here. For the few folks that don't know you and what you do around here, who are you? What do you do?
Well, I am Thomas Christ. I am I guess you would call it industrial, but that's probably too... I don't know. I don't like to fit in any kind of boxes. I just kind of I do industrial, I do metal, I do rock, I do electronic, new wave. It's kind of all over the place, even a little bit of rap. And I have a YouTube channel where I do 2 live shows every week. I do You Rock on Wednesday, and then on Friday I do Thomas Christ Live, where I perform a lot of my music. And yeah, as a lot of people around here probably already know, I have a few songs in my back catalog. So it's kind of fun to get all these songs out there, like stuff that I wrote from things that I've written rather recently, like as recently as late last year, to all the way back when I was in high school, when I was 16 years old. So it's really cool that this stuff I never knew was going to have an audience. Now it has at least a little bit of an audience, and that's so awesome to see.
Isn't it cool? And isn't it weird? Like if you went back to your teenage self when you were starting out and you said, not only will I have released now, is it 17 albums? I get this wrong because it's so many. 17 albums that you've completed now?
Yeah, you've got it. 17 albums, and I've actually got 2 songs now recorded for my 18th album.
So when we talk about things like singles versus albums, Thomas is pretty qualified to talk about that. Congratulations on making that transition. So as well as a great musician, you are now running a fantastic YouTube channel, Thomas Christ. There you are, and 290 subscribers. I think one time we chatted recently, you were just under 200, and I think you got over 200 during a show, if I recall it correctly. So let's do that to 300 here today, because I know that there's many folks know you and know your channel, but I don't think there's going to be enough people that are going to watch this live or on the replay that I think we can get you a few extras there today. But subscribers aren't everything, but what is everything is the fact that you have 2 very cool shows, and you can see that. Look at this. You've done some exceptional work here on the channel, by the way. I was looking at your channel before, and you've got your nice header there telling us when to come and check it out. That's something that I haven't done, and I should do. I'm going to take some advice from you now. You've got your about page all set up here now, which is all looking great. So good job on that one. So do go over and check out Mr. Thomas Christ, and make sure you subscribe and check out all of his other links as well, because the other thing you've done there is you've got all your links there to your Bandcamp, to your SoundCloud, your Facebook, and your Twitter. So go stalk Thomas in a nice way. Go follow Thomas wherever you possibly can.
Hit the button. I promise it won't hurt.
And it's free.
It's free. It's totally free.
That's what we say. It's free to follow and subscribe. So why wouldn't you? No, but it's well worth it. Let's say g'day to the folks who are here live, and then we'll crack straight in because we've got a bunch of topics to talk about here as well. Hello to Friggsy, our friend over there in Ireland. I hope you are well. We've got Guzzo of Oz here. We've got Chris Pizzy here, the one and only Russ 8889, Mr. Andy Dion. We've got Joe and Barry Glenn. We got Tremor Bear. We got Mark Bro. Amelia's here. Some lady called Amelia. I think she's pretty cool. We got Bubba, we got Mars Capone, we got the Mix Club. It's an all-star cast here in the audience, let alone here on the stage. So Mr. Smith is here as well, and Lila Lou Reality, and the Lily Pillies. Look at that. Everyone's coming out to party with Thomas. Let's jump into our first topic because we've
All
got a
right.
whole heap to talk about here. Now, you proposed, I asked you, I said, what do you want to talk about, Thomas? What do you want to rant about music? This is your hour of rant. And we want to start by talking about this one here. And I'm going to throw it out to the audience that are here live, or if you're watching on the replay, you can let us know down in the comments. But how important are albums? As someone who's got 17 of them, how important is it to create albums these days? Or are we living in a purely singles world now?
Well, I think, man, it depends on the artist. I actually, like, after I released the 17th album, The Creator, last year, I did an EP, and I've actually started, like, my life has changed dramatically from where I was late last year because now I'm working two jobs. So, a full time job and a part time job, and then also doing the YouTube channel. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to try doing the singles thing. And that's how I came
Mm.
into 2022 thinking I'm going to do the singles thing. And it just didn't work for me. And the reason it didn't work for me is because albums give me focus and direction. And then when I don't have that focus and direction, I'm just like, I can make music. What am I writing about? What is where am I going with all this? And I just love having an album. I love creating the artwork and zeroing in on a topic and kind of a theme, and then I have some sort of, you know, direction, some sort of guidance as far as like where am I going to go. If you kind of get what I'm saying with that.
I do, and it is weird because I've never sat down to create an album, and it's something that it's probably the reason why you probably know this, but at the start of 2022, I sat down. I'm like, right, this year I'm going to create 12 songs. I'm going to do a song every month, and by the end of the year, I'll have an album. But because I had kind of no focus to say this is the album and this is what I'm working towards, I just said, yeah, one song a month as a single, and then compile them all together. We're in May and I've got one completed song for the year. So it is a challenge when you're trying to do that. And I don't know. And again, we've got so Andy Dion says both, and I think that's the way a lot of people do it these days. I know that like artists like Drake and all these really popular artists these days will just go single, single, single. Like they'll just keep releasing singles and they'll build hype and then release and build hype and then release, and then every album they're releasing is more like a compilation. Do you
Yeah.
think that's an okay kind of strategy these days, or do you think that actually sitting down and going like, do you like a theme for an album? I know a lot of your albums have had themes in the past. Are you more of a theme album person as opposed to just a collection of songs?
I'm definitely more of I have to have a concept. It's again, it's just like having this topic, having some sort of direction. Sometimes, and it can be different things. It can be sometimes it's actually like a topic that the lyrics are going to revolve around. Sometimes it's a topic where it's not so much the lyrics. What it is the musical style. So I did my albums, the Decomposing and Regaining Composure. Decomposing was me
Mm.
going back to where my roots and kind of the early music that I was making, and which was more electronic and didn't have guitars, and it was more new wave. And then I went to Regaining Composure, and that album was me going back to more industrial metal and more complex arrangements and more, heavy kind of stuff. So that was the theme there. Wasn't really a lyrical theme going on there. So
Yeah. It's yeah, and it's interesting because again, everyone has a different way, and I guess the answers to a lot of the questions we raise on this are it depends and you do you. Like if I could answer every question with a single answer, it's like it depends. You do what works for you. So I think for some folks, if you want to just release only singles for the rest of your life, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think, and I don't know, do you think it's an age thing? Do you think that the older you are, the more you remember the physical media and therefore more likely you are to dig albums and want to create albums because you grew up with records or cassettes or CDs? Is that part of it?
yeah, well, we grew up with albums, and that was really important to us, especially those of us who are into rock music. Rock music, just historically, albums were very, very important. And, that goes back to the days of records when
Yeah.
you had to fill a record and you had two sides to the record. And that whole tradition sort of carried on through cassette tapes and through CDs. But now we're completely divorced from physical media entirely. And that's kind of changed things for the younger generation where they don't think of things in that way, and they think of things
Yeah.
in terms of just singles and going on iTunes and let's get the latest single from whoever. So it's definitely age factors into it in a big way.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that the playlist culture as well that's these days with these young kids that need to get off my lawn. They're all about the playlists and they're all about the singles. But
Exactly.
and yeah, one thing, and look, this is going to be a really good segue because the next topic that we're going to talk about here is subscriptions, and maybe subscription music as opposed to buying your music has changed things a lot as well, because it used to be that you had to buy, like, there were singles, like for those that are old enough that remember, obviously the old 45 vinyl, the singles, the CD singles. But more often than not, by the time you bought two or three songs, you could basically go buy the album anyway, and you'd do that, and you'd sit down with the whole album and listen to the whole thing, and you'd convince yourself, because you'd just spent, well, here in Australia, $30. That's how much we had to pay for CDs, but $30 or $20 or $15, you'd have to convince yourself that every song is amazing, and even the deep track 7 and 8 that were the deep cuts were just really cool. They were just underrated, man, because you'd spent all this hard-earned cash on it. But let's talk subscriptions, because
Yeah.
you asked this question when I asked you for topics, and you said, yeah, are we being sort of nickel and dime to death? Are we being overrun by subscriptions, and are they having a negative impact? What's your view on subscriptions? Do you subscribe to stuff, and do you think that they have a place in music and creative endeavors when it comes to sort of apps and platforms and things?
Yeah, well, I do, because you have to if you want to have a lot of cool things. So I subscribe, and I'm just like going through the mental list of all the things that I subscribe to, and it's like, okay, $10 a month for story blocks in LumaFusion, $10 a month for the iCloud 2 terabyte storage,
Mm.
another $2.99 I think for Google Drive. And this is in US dollars, of course. And if you're in Australia, it's even more.
Mm.
uh, and there's a few other assorted things. It's, I and the other one that I was thinking of was oh goodness, what is that app that I use? There's a camera app that I use that does really weird
Oh,
hyperspective. That's what it is.
cool. Yep, yep.
Perspective. So that's another like $5 or $6 a month, and you start thinking, well, okay, that's not that bad. But when you start to total it all up, it's a
Mm.
lot, and it never ends. You just keep paying it, and eventually you've passed where any other app that's comparable, that's a one-time fee, you've paid way more than what that app is worth. So,
Yeah, and that is the tough thing, isn't it? That it
yeah,
looks so tempting. The whole thing about that's, these can be sort of grouped as microtransactions. It was sort of something that started with those little mobile games you'd play, and we're now seeing it in things like in apps and within even music creation apps. And I guess subscriptions are like a form of that, where the hit is so small that it's like the death by a thousand cuts, or the boiling of the frog in the water, that you're just turning up slowly. Because if you
totally.
actually look at it month by month, you're like, hey, I mean, $3 a month. How do you go wrong? But $3 a month is actually $36 a year, which over 5 years you've paid $150 for something that, are you using $150 worth? Or and it's weird, because it comes down to I know that not many people in this community use Pro Tools, but I know some people do, and I know some have dabbled in the past. Pro Tools used to be a purchased app, and now it's moved to this subscription model. Whereas something like Logic, that you buy one, people go, wow, $200 for a DAW for Logic is expensive. And then the same people will go, oh, but Pro Tools is only $19.99 per month. Why wouldn't I go with that? And it's like, well, after a year, you've actually paid for it. And then you have to keep going. And that's the thing. What,
Do the math.
yeah, exactly. Do the math. And I think that what I do subscribe to and what I like is when you're getting additional things. So I think there's a difference here between a subscription to, say, so I use Canva. I've subscribed to Canva, and the reason I don't mind paying that as a subscription as opposed to a one-off app fee is that every month they're adding new pictures, new banners, new text, new fonts, new designs, new layouts, and they're constantly changing and evolving. And like, they've just released an app, for goodness sake. Like, it used to just be web-based, and now you can use an actual app for it on Mac and on PC. So I think things like that, and again, things like obviously Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or Netflix, it's content. And I think content subscriptions I'm happier with, as opposed to subscribing to something that's pretty static. Do you feel the same way about that sort of stuff?
Yeah, and like Morris has mentioned there in the chat, like $100 a year now for Pro Tools. A lot of studios are moving away from Pro Tools, where
Mm.
Pro Tools used to be the industry standard, and part of the reason for that was it was tied to hardware. So you had to you had, if you had certain hardware, you had to use Pro Tools and vice versa. And then it's at some point, I think it was around like 2012, it became disconnected where you could just get Pro Tools and you didn't have to have the hardware. And now that they've moved to this more subscription model, especially with the support, I've just seen so many professional studio producers are moving away from, they're moving away from Pro Tools now,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are going to Reaper, honestly.
Yeah, well, and look, that's I started with Reaper. I always do things a bit backwards, so I went the other way. I started with Reaper and then found it was too complex. Like I had too many options and features for me, so I simplified and dumbed things down back all the way to GarageBand, and now I'm slowly working my way back through Logic. But yeah, something like Reaper that's super fully customizable, and I've even seen you can get skins and things for Reaper that basically turn into Pro Tools, which every single button and every single key combination is just Pro Tools. And Reaper, I think the commercial license is $65, or I think $299 if you're for a multi-user commercial user, like ever. So you
Yeah,
can see that if you pay $99 a year for Pro Tools, 3 years, just buy a lifetime Reaper membership, lifetime Reaper, use it commercially forever, and then you got no problems. So yeah, it's a weird one. So yeah, interesting stuff. So let us know your views again if you're here live or if you're on the replay about subscriptions. We moved on so quickly that we didn't get to the albums versus singles comments, but I just wanted to jump through a few here. So the Mix Club says is making me think I stopped albums when I stopped working with my band. After that, just single. I think the ideas were more to a mode when it was with the band. That's an interesting one too, actually. Yeah, maybe
yeah,
that's a lot of single creators. You create a song, you create a single, whereas with the band, maybe that gives you more of that motivation to create an album. I like it. Gortium says I listen to cassettes almost daily. Oh, I've got a bunch of cassettes, and I've finally got a boombox over there that I can actually play cassettes on. I should totally whack out my cassette
that's cool.
tape. At 64 years of age here, says John Frank, I'm astonished and ecstatic that LPs are sold, outsold CDs. Yeah, exactly. Vinyl is making the big comeback for physical media for sure. I don't have a record player, but if I did, I
No,
would
me
buy
neither.
vinyl. I deliberately, let me rephrase that. If you want to collect vinyl, more power to you. I love it. I love the idea. I love the concept. I love the album art. I love the liner notes. If I bought a record player, I would just go and rebuy all the CDs. I would get Nevermind on vinyl just because.
That
So
would be kind of cool. I would get it just for like to hang on the wall or something, you know?
well, I do own a few records, and I'm like, yeah, there is a blank wall behind me up there, and I'm like, that really needs decorating. Maybe I do need to actually do that. Frigsy over in Ireland said, from my limited research, looked like Spotify want singles. Yeah, so maybe the way to go is to have an album ready, but release 5 or 6 songs a single, and then release the album. I think that's very common, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people are doing that these days. That they've completed an album, and I see a lot of bands. Red Hot Chili Peppers did this recently. They had a whole album, it was ready to go, but then they released a single and a video, and then a second single and video, and then the album. So I think that's becoming more common, and that was done back in the day
That's
a
the
little
way
bit as well.
that's the way I do it too. I kind of like
Mm,
I like to produce, you know, if I do an album and it's going to be 13 songs, I'll
yeah.
give you 7 of them. 6, 7, and then the rest of them you have to buy the album for, because there's got to be some incentive. Like if I just released every song on the album as a single, then why the heck would you buy the album? Yeah,
Which worked
what would you have to look forward to? So
exactly, which worked well for you because when I first heard Virus Infect and Mask, that I was
yeah,
just like, oh, I'm going to buy this whole album because I want to hear what else is in this what's in this album. Mark Bro over in Canada says, I think nowadays albums are more concept or themes. There's no point compiling an album of unrelated song when you can release the songs as singles as soon as they're finished. That's actually true, Mark. One thing I did want to mention on there, and I think we might talk releasing music a little bit more later as well, but do keep in mind, and I've been watching other bands and artists do this, releasing alternative versions of songs. I just tried it with my song Murdering Time. I released an alternative version of it.
yeah, that
It
was
can
great.
actually work. Yeah, thank you. It can actually work really well. And even compiling like small EPs of songs that you've already got out there. I did that again last year when I was sort of struggling with getting something released. I'm like, hey, I got these songs. I'd release some of them. Same as what you said before. I'd release like 3 as singles, 3 were unreleased, and I put those 6 on an EP. Instead of releasing a 3-song EP of just the new stuff, I included 3 familiar songs. And again, I think that made people want to check out those EPs even more because they knew some of the stuff and they didn't know the other stuff. So
Or you
it's
could get somebody like Russ 8889 to do a remix. Remixes are popular.
Remixes are super popular, and that's actually a very, very good segue, Thomas. You clearly you've done this stuff before. It's a very good segue into talking about the wonderful sponsors, because we are brought to you by BandLab today. They're a platform that I've been playing with quite a lot lately, and they're super cool. But I do get the question, because we were just talking about DAWs and platforms, and here's BandLab, by the way. It's a free in-browser digital audio workstation. So before you try, your GarageBand or your Pro Tools or your Reaper or your anything, you can use this with literally just Chrome on your PC or your Mac, and you don't even need a super powerful computer. You literally sign up, use a link up there or down in the description. You sign up, you jump in here, and you start creating. And a lot of people say to me, why would I do this if I'm using Logic or if I'm using Reaper or if I'm using GarageBand? Well, there's actually some really cool features in here. And one of my favorite things is not that one, but down here, the BandLab sounds. Have you checked out any of these BandLab sound packs, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the most impressive things I think about BandLab is there's a ton of free content there that you can use
It's
to produce songs. It's like kind of like jaw dropping how much there is there, and
it,
it's
it is
good too.
crazy. Yeah, it's all free. It is all able to be used. You get the commercial license for it. None of this stuff is copyright. You can use it to your heart's content. Obviously, with any loops or samples or packs, make sure you're combining multiple. We've talked about that before here on the show, but don't just grab one person's one loop and make a whole song just of that loop, because someone else has probably done that. But the cool thing is here, a lot of the complaints people get around, say, GarageBand or Logic is, oh, where are the guitar sounds? Like, there's no cool guitar samples. Well, guess what? If I just type in here acoustic guitars, you've actually got a whole bunch of like country, you got scratch and cut, you got folk pop, you got 100 samples, 100 loops here of acoustic guitar, all in different key signatures and different tempos. And all you need to do is grab these, drag them straight over here into your project. It'll automatically put the project to the right tempo and the right key, and then you can actually use this loop. And if you don't want to use it in BandLab, here's a little tip. They probably won't want me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Export it as a WAV file and throw it into your project. So you can use this library to kind of a bit of a song starter, like grab a couple of acoustic guitars. And here's the coolest thing. One of the things that people say to me is, where's the metal at? Where's my metal? Well,
You got
check
it.
out just how many metal packs, like new metal, you got millennial grunge, you got indie stuff. Baritone guitars, for goodness sake. Like, there is a heap of free content here in the BandLab sound browser. So I highly recommend you go and
But
check it out.
it's like having a whole studio full of session musicians at your fingertips.
It really is. And, we're talking drums, guitars, vocal samples, like it's ridiculous. I've only scratched the
You have a
surface
whole
here.
sample pack on there of just somebody like doing screams for
There,
metal, and
I
it's
saw that. There is the metal screams pack. If you come in here, look at that. There's the scream, the rock metal scream. So if you've got a really cool song and you can't do the scream or the growls, just come in here and grab yourself some free growls and free screams. It is super cool. You'll lose a day. That's my only caution to you. Go and check it out. Go and sign up to BandLab for free. But you'll literally lose a day just playing around with all the cool sounds and samples in there. And then the beauty part is you can use those and layer up your own guitars, your own bass, your own vocals, your own virtual instruments with your MIDI keyboard. It's phenomenal. So we do thank BandLab. They're a very cool platform, and they are supporting independent music and independent creators like this very channel. So we thank them very much. Totally. Thomas, when you're creating music, I mean, the age-old question:
Yeah,
lyrics or music? What comes first and why?
chicken or the egg. Well, for for me, I've done it both ways, and I tend to get better results most of the time. Although there's always exceptions. I tend to get better results for me when I write lyrics first, and I
Yep.
think it's just again, it's the same thing that we were talking about before with what I was saying about albums. It just gives you focus. It gives you a blueprint because like I can kind of when I have the lyrics there, I can kind of start to hear the song come together in my head. I can hear melodies come together, and sometimes when I don't do it that way, when I do the music first, that doesn't happen, and then it just kind of is like, well, what am I doing here? I'm just kind of lost,
Yeah. I get it. I'm sorry. I was just throwing a poll here. So those watching live on YouTube, there is a YouTube poll that I've just thrown there because I'd be interested to see while we chat and rant about this. What do you usually do? And look, I know I should have put an "it depends," but I'm making you go out on a limb here. I'm making you say music or lyrics, because I could say, oh well, sometimes of that, and I agree. And it really does depend, because occasionally, so occasionally it'll be both for me. So weird one is the work in progress song that I did for Song Timber last year. I just had that. I had we're all just a work in progress. Nobody's got it figured out. Was in my head. So I guess the words came first, but it very quickly became that hook, which is we're all just a work in progress. So the melody and that idea kind of came together, and I think that's kind of my response is that I usually have both of them, but the vast majority, and I think it also depends on your instrument. So a lot of it for me is whatever I'm noodling on, and because it's usually my acoustic guitar that I'm noodling on, it's almost always a chord progression or some sort of riff. So I base my whole song around a riff when I'm doing it. For your last album, The Creator, what was the process for that? Did most of those come out of the music or come out of the lyrical ideas?
I want to say most of them were lyrics because when I came up with that whole concept, so what I do is I come up with the concept. I say, okay, I'm going to do an album called The Creator. It's going to be about sort of the struggles and mindset of somebody who's doing some creative endeavor. For the most part, for me, it's music. And then I go and I say, okay, if I picture that album in my head, what songs are going to be on that album? If somebody else made it, not me, somebody that I like, what would those song titles look like? And I start to get a vision of like, okay, these are the song titles I think should be on there. And there's going to be more than I have text files full of rejected song titles and album titles. But you kind of start to come up like, okay, I think I can vibe with this title. I think I vibe with this one. And then you go, okay, I'm going to write lyrics for this song. I'm going to write lyrics for We Are the Creator. We Are the Creators. I'm going to write one for The Art That Makes the World Go Round. I'm going to write some for Right About Now. And then you write those lyrics. And then, hey, you got a good chunk of work done towards an album when you have that. So
Yeah.
that's the way I approached it the last time.
Oh, it's interesting, and look, people are getting tied up in knots here because obviously it's a tough question to answer because it really does depend, and it will. And I think Leela's spot here was can't answer that. Things have changed since I started writing music, so sometimes, and I've come across this as well. There's some people that have started like they used to write poetry, and now they write songs, and therefore just by the way their brain functions, they always write the poem and then put it to music. Whereas I think if you learn an instrument and then you start becoming a songwriter, maybe you are more biased towards creating on your instrument and then adding words afterwards. And I'm definitely that way around because I tend to. I don't even have words for my songs. So sometimes I'll have a song concept, I have no idea what it's about, and I'll literally just go do 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 do. I'll literally do 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 da 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 the melody, and then
I'll do it sometimes.
And then plug it in later. And I thought I was a freak for doing that in the past. And then, I saw an interview with Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and he said he does exactly that. Like he was writing "Dude Looks Like a Lady," and he was just like "na da 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 da." So he knew the melody he wanted, he knew the structure, he just didn't know the words.
Have you ever listened to the demos for Metallica? Because
No.
the very last thing that James Hetfield writes is lyrics. So there's literally, and he does the whole do do do. So there's literally like do 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 do, and so he does the whole song in do do do's, and then he just writes the lyric. That's the last thing when they go from the whatever demo version or whatever to the final.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm going to have to check that out. Well, there you go.
It's hilarious.
I'm gonna take credit now. I'm gonna yep. Look, I'm just like Aerosmith and Metallica, so
Yeah.
I'll feel good about myself and my doo doos and my da das there. Yeah,
You're in
yeah.
pretty
And
good
look,
company with that.
yeah, I'm down with that. I'll go with it.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
You crowdsource your lyrics too. A lot of times.
I do, I know, but there's a lot of people. I'm going to get sued so often in the future when people are like, "Hey, I gave you two of those lines for that song you wrote in 2019." But yeah, I think that is a cool thing to do, and I think similar to what someone was mentioning before about bands versus individuals. I think even though I don't have a band, because I write, especially my Song Timber songs, I write them live here on the channel.
Mhm.
there's a lot of interaction. A lot of people will just throw a lyric idea out, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's actually a really cool concept." Some won't work, some I'll reject, but nicely and say, "I don't think that works with it." But some of the best lines have, yeah, literally come from the community. So there you are. I'm in serious trouble. I'm going to have to get a lawyer to fend off all the lawsuits in the future. Let's finish up this poll, and then we'll move on to our next topic. So I'm going to hit the end poll button, and not surprisingly, before you see the results of the poll, Thomas, which way do you think it's going to go?
Music first, probably.
Yeah, you are spot on by a very large margin. So 84% were music and only 15% were
I am
lyrics.
very much in the minority.
There you go. Yeah, which it's interesting. It's good. It's good to be different. It's good to be
Yeah.
unique. But yeah, there you go. So a lot of people are creating music, and again, it's probably because this channel is all about music creation, as opposed to not that it's not about lyrics and songwriting. It definitely is, but I guess a lot of people are learning to record music, and you learn to record your instruments, or you learn to record the instrumental side, and then vocal, because vocals. Not everyone's a vocalist. I guess that's the other thing, that not everyone is even a vocalist or
We
even
have, we have,
creates music.
we have a lot of people in the community, like Marcus Cannell, like Alex
Yep,
Backus, Russ 8889, who mainly do instrumental music. So
that's exactly
you
right.
don't have to worry
So
about
yeah,
it. You don't have to worry
so yeah,
about it.
I was probably already being super biased by just saying, yeah, lyrics are music. Because some people are like, well, of course it's music because I only create music. So
Exactly.
it's not being so piecist against pieces and only worrying about songs. So we'll move to our next topic in just a moment. But once again, if you're just joining us here, we are at the halfway mark. We've still got another half an hour of ranting to go here. So if you think we've exhausted all the topics, you are so wrong. We've got a heap more topics to go through here today. But welcome to Thomas Christ, who's here on the show today. If you have not checked out Thomas's YouTube channel and all of the other places that you can follow him, you need to go and do that. There are a link down in the description there, and only one. I think the problem is that everyone that's already here is
Yeah,
already subscribed to you, Thomas.
I'm looking. It's like watching the stream on You Rock.
So yeah,
New
there's a
people.
lot of folks that are here. But if you're watching on the replay, or if you're checking this one out after the fact, and you are not already following or subscribed to Mr. Thomas Christ, jump on down to the YouTube channel and go ahead and do that. Speaking of YouTube, that is our next topic. And see, look at that segue. It's just smooth as butter here today. YouTube, how much is too much? And now you proposed this, and I could interpret that a few different ways. So why don't you let folks know what you actually mean by how much is too much YouTube, and then what your opinion is on that.
Well, I think it was recently I was talking with, I think it was Gortium actually, and about this whole idea of, we talk about like a work-life balance or a creativity and life balance, but I was thinking about a YouTube creativity balance, because you can get into, like, there's so many great shows out there just in this community, and not
Hmm.
even factoring in the stuff that's outside the community. There's so many great shows now that it's like, when am I gonna actually like create music, especially if you like now I'm working two jobs. Like, where is the time coming from? So I think it's just that you have to find somewhere a YouTube life balance where, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really difficult.
Yeah, spot on. It is hard, and I think as any more creators, and it's the best problem to have. It's
Yeah.
the variety is the best problem to have, and it's very similar to a lot of other things as well in terms of what takes up your time. And as soon as the barrier to entry for something is reduced, the amount of variety increases, and then the difficulty of curating what you actually should and shouldn't be watching, consuming, doing is really hard to do. The same thing happened with music. As soon as the home recording revolution started, which I'd suggest started 10 years ago, I think it really hit its absolute peak about 2.5 years ago for some unknown reason that no one can possibly think about, because so much music was getting produced that it was really hard to keep up with. And I know that there's a lot of people in this community that I would love to listen to more of their music, and they say, hey, I just released a single, an EP, an album. But I'm at the point now where if I listen to every song produced by every member of this community, I would do nothing but listen to music, which it sounds lovely and sounds amazing. But it also means I can't prepare for and do these shows. It means I can't, be a father and husband. It means I can't look after my own physical and mental health and well-being. So you're right. It is a matter of curating. And I think the biggest thing about this is, and I know you're the same on your show and I'm the same on this show,
Mhm.
people will watch the show and people may be able to watch all of it or some of it or none of it. And I'm not going to be offended with any of those outcomes. If you have the time and the inclination to watch something and it's in your wheelhouse and it's up your alley, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. I don't want to say everyone should just be watching 100% 24/7
Yeah.
because you got to get out there and start creating. And I think that's the thing. If you're not taking breaks from doing other things, where are you going to actually create music? It's like people that watch tutorials for
Yeah.
24 hours a day and never actually put that information to use. Is that on the right sort of path? Is that the sort of things you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, no, totally. That's exactly what I was thinking about, and yeah, that's kind of the part of the reason I started You Rock, because I saw all this awesome music that was coming out from Create, Record, Release, from the GarageBand Users Forum, from shows like YML, and I know I wanted to watch all these things. I wanted to watch all these and hear all these great songs, but I'm like, when am I going to do it? And I was missing a lot of things. So I
Mm,
thought I'm going to start this show, and I'll be able to actually like kind of kill two birds with one stone, because
mm,
I can listen to these songs. A lot of times I hear them for the first time, which is cool, and at the same time expose other people to them, and help other folks get their music out there
mm.
to more people. So it's kind of like a win-win situation, you know. And I
So,
know
so
you
that's
were
the
kind of
answer.
similar when you started YML, listening, wanting to listen to everybody's music and finding the time to do it, and so you started YML to kind of facilitate that.
Absolutely. So what we're saying is everyone needs to start their own online live music listening show so that you can actually spend time listening to music. But yeah, and speaking of which, You Rock, which is the show that you do, is indeed a killer show. You do a great job. You play everything you get. Now that's a commitment
Yeah.
to your time, because I know when I started with Your Music Live, I think it was an hour, and then I realized that I had way too many songs to do an hour, so it became 2 hours, and then I sort of slipped out to 2.5, 3 hours, and then I realized that after 2 hours I went completely loopy and could no longer form complete sentences. So I restricted myself to 2 hours. But I get a backlog, as you know, as a moderator on the channel. I got a backlog, and at the moment it's at about 3 to 4 weeks, and that's a challenge because you get so much
Yeah.
music. And what made you decide to play everything you get? Is it literally just, and is it everything you get? Are there any that Thomas Trust rejects?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with me is that there have been a few songs where I just like, because of the whole, I don't want to get too, political and stuff, but
Yeah,
because of the whole kind of situation that we're in the world, there are some topics that I just don't agree with, and I can't put it on my show.
yeah,
And like, so I'm not offended by any kind of, I mean, you listen to my music. I'm not offended by profanity or anything like that. That's fine. But where I draw the line is just sometimes there's things that promote ideologies that I'm not real comfortable with. So I have
yeah.
rejected a few things on those grounds. But pretty much other than that, or I can't even think of an example where there was something from a quality perspective. I,
Mm,
I tend to play, we get songs that are from beginners. We get songs that are from people that are very, very good, like, like a Brad or Russ 8889.
yeah.
And I kind of, I try to give everybody a platform equally.
Yeah, which you definitely do, and it is a good point. And look, I won't go too far into that because obviously it's off topic and we've got too many actual topics to talk about. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is interesting, and I always say that, look, it's not. People say, oh, why wouldn't you just play everything? Are you censoring? And I'm like, I call it curating. But yeah, if you want to call it censorship, that's cool too. But yeah, I play most things. But if there's anything that's going to be, hateful to a certain type of people or completely like down one track, like you say, an ideology that I
Yeah.
don't think is 2022 compatible, is the way that I put it, then
Exactly.
yeah, I won't play it. But that doesn't mean that if you're right into something, and again, I look at it in terms of positivity as opposed to negativity. If you're
Right.
writing a song that's about, I'm really into this thing, I don't care if it's again, because you're Thomas Christ, I don't care if it's the Jesus or the devil that you're writing a song about. If you're really into it, you're really into it, and that's cool because it's a positivity. If you're saying everyone who does a thing is bad and evil and is going to burn in hell, well then yeah, I got a problem with that because
Yeah.
you're being hateful, and that's not cool. So yeah, again, we'll move on because that is a slippery slope that we don't need to go down. Not in this show. There's plenty of other live streams on YouTube that can rant about those sort of things. We'll talk about the grid in just a moment, but I I'll just pause for a question here. Tremor Bear, hello Tremor Bear, by the way, good to have you here. Difference between an LP and an EP. So really, the only difference is length. It comes from the vinyl long playing record versus extended play. So there's technically three. There's SP, EP, and LP. SP is a single play, which was traditionally a small 45 RPM 7-inch single that had one song on each side. So an A side and a B side. That's where you get the term B side. It was the flip side of your single. An EP was a larger, usually 10-inch or 12-inch record that had maybe 5 to 6 songs on it. And an LP is a long playing record, 33 and a third, 12-inch vinyl, has 10 to 12 songs traditionally. So it's really just terminology. But yeah, thanks for raising that, because I throw out the words LP and EP and single and just assume that people know what they mean and where they came from. And sometimes, assumptions, you know what they say. If you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
Exactly. And then, of course, both of those terms, like today, other than being descriptive, are really not all that relevant.
They're really not. You could literally just say a 1-song or a 5-song release or a 10-song release. Like, it really, there's no difference. And people argue. I've been on forums where they're arguing. Oh, EP is 4 to 6 songs. 3 songs is only a single and 7 songs is an album. No. It's got to be 8 songs to be an album. I'm like, who actually cares? What difference does it make in 2022?
It's what you want it to be.
Exactly. It is what you want it to be. I just nod and smile and agree these days. I'm just like, yeah, whatever you want it to be. Again, like we said before, it depends and you do you. There you go. There's your answers to everything in life. Let's talk about going off the grid. So you talked about this around a lot of music being produced these days, I guess, is on the grid. And I was talking with Mike from Creative Source on his show a week ago about the fact that the DAWs, our digital audio workstations now, do kind of push us into a couple of things. They push us into one tempo. They push us into a 4x4 metronome beat, and they push us into the grid, which is actually making sure that we have everything lining up in bars and nice and computery. What's your views on this, and why did you think this topic was worth chatting about?
Well, I just think that we've gotten to, and I agree. Like, I heard this for the first time really from Rick Beato, and he kind of has done some things where he's talked about like why music just seems a little bit more soulless in a way these days, why it doesn't have any feeling. For people who grew up with the great rock bands in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, why don't we experience that anymore today? And one theory, and it's just a theory, but it's that the drums and everything is set to a grid, and that's fine. A lot of electronic music is done that way and has always been done that way. And so that's kind of a different thing. But when you're talking about rock music with a rock band, they take the drums or sample replaced. Everything can be altered some way by computer. They line up all the vocals and everything to match this grid exactly. And all the tempos are 100% consistent. And Rick Beato has talked about like how tempos over the course of a song, not a dramatic tempo change, but it's changed subtly. It would speed up for the choruses, it would slow down for the verses, and we've lost that. And I know also Mike. Hello, Mike. I see Mike in the chat. He did a video recently about it too, which got me thinking about it again. So I don't know. I just feel like, in the auto tune also with the vocals. When we talk about auto tune, I'm not even talking so much about the T-Pain effect. I'm talking about the subtle tuning that they do on vocals. Some people may not even be able to perceive it, but they use it on almost every track nowadays. And it's kind of like uncanny valley when you have a singer that is always hitting the pitches perfectly. So yeah. I think we need more elements to not be on the grid. I know it's really hard because we all use DAWs and they're all grid based, but it is nice to get away from the grid for some things at least.
It is. And again, well, the answer is it depends and you do you. Again, I could answer every question with that. But yeah, Andy Dion says my band Set 22 doesn't use a grid or a click. Better to have a free flow for rock. Absolutely. Russ 8889, we work off the grid. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Russ and Gary for the Delicate Giants, whose album t-shirt you're wearing right there, by the way. A little bit of promotion there for the Delicate Giants. Yeah, and look, I think Doug Kidder has it spot on, which is perfect is sterile. And I would argue that a lot of what could be really good music these days is actually damaged by how on the grid and how sterile it is and how, like you say, tuned. And again, I'm the same. I'm not even talking. I listen to, because I've got children, I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I listen to a lot of the Disney music, and I listen to the production on that Disney music. And every character that's singing in every song, every note is perfect. And I want Elsa to just be a little bit pitchy dog on some of those
Yeah.
notes, because that's what I really love. When I listen to my favorite vocalist, when I listen to Michael Stipe, he ain't hitting every note, and sometimes he's wavering around the note in such a beautiful, creative way that I love it. Like, I was listening to some Tori Amos yesterday. I'm doing a 1994 happy hour this weekend, listening to Tori going, man, yeah, she's got just some of the slides between notes. Like, you try to throw Melodyne on Tori Amos, you'd have a heck of a time doing it, because she's all over the place. But it's really good. It works a treat. So,
You play
yeah.
Tori Amos, you're going to make my wife very happy. She's a
Oh, there you go.
fan.
Yeah, I'm working on corn. I'm actually trying to convince my wife to sing Cornflake Girl.
Oh, there, that would
So
be awesome.
we'll see how that goes. If
Come on,
you'll
Georgie.
probably see me. Yes, yes. Come on, Georgie. Come on. Everyone encourage Georgie, Cornflake Girl. She does a really good job of it. But it is a tough song. It's got that Kate Bush style. You're bad. You're alive. Anyway, we're getting way off track again here. If you are just joining us, we do have about 15 minutes left, and then after this show, yeah, we've got another great show coming up, and that is our friend Mr. Mike Enjo over at Creative Source. He has the Fix My Mix show, so get yourself on over there. Here, look what we'll do. We'll throw this. See, Thomas is usually my moderator, so he would probably be the one doing this. But because he's my guest, he's getting the day off, so he doesn't have to do this. So I've just thrown a link in the chat there for anyone who wants to go and set themselves up. Just open that one in a tab or a browser or somewhere behind, or just file it away. Because as soon as we're done here in 15 minutes time, you can go over there, and it's a special edition, which is a mix tips special. So I'm intrigued to find out the mix tips. I've always said I enjoy Mike's tips, so all right. Let's move on to our next topic here. Is rock music dead? We just talked about the grid, and obviously rock music is a type of music that maybe doesn't need the grid as much as many other types of music. It could be argued. And I kind of talked about this with Mike as well when I chatted with him, but where are we at with rock music? Do we put the toe tag on now and say it is Dunsky? Do we enjoy the fact that it's super underground and not popular? Where's your head at when it comes to rock music?
Well, see, this is the thing with rock music, as we know from YML, from U Rock, from all the other shows. There's awesome rock music being produced every week here in this community, and I'm sure other communities like this are around too, where other people are doing awesome stuff. I've heard some great stuff on Glenn Fricker's channel. You know, his Fix My Mix over on the Spectre Sound Studios channel. So there's definitely people doing it. The problem is, where is it in the mainstream? Where is guitar-based music in the mainstream? It is just gone. And I think what it is like back in the 90s and before that, you had people with these record companies and things that are the tastemakers. They would take risks. They're not
Yeah.
taking risks anymore. They're just like, nah, we know that this formula works. And so we're just going to keep repeating this over and over and over and over again. And it just kind of, we're almost coming to a point of like some kind of mono music thing that's happening where all the genres are just becoming one genre. It's really weird. This is only happening in the mainstream. And I don't know how we get out of it. I hope we do at some point, but I don't know.
Yeah. And it's weird because I always say that whenever there's a culture, there's always a counterculture following soon behind. And look, for me, like, I mean, I don't watch mainstream TV, but I know that reality shows are super popular. It's just a cookie cutter thing now that they just go, right, let's do a storytelling thing with drama, with backstory, like all the BS backstories that they have to put in those reality shows now, whether it's about cooking or dating or music, they're all the same. And it's kind of the same with music. They put these formulaic approaches into music. And like you say, they're like, like, well, okay, that artist, Drake was really popular, so let's just get 20 Drake clones and throw them at the charts for the next 10 years, and that's what we end up with. And even when they do take a risk, even when Billie Eilish pops out from under a mushroom and says, hey, look, this is all a bit different and cool, isn't it? And now what do we get? We get 100 Billie Eilish attempted clones trying to do exactly what Billie Eilish did. So even when it's different, it's the same, which I guess is, an old man yelling at clouds here. But it's, it's weird. And I don't know, I've almost made my peace with it at this point, that I accept that the underground, it's kind of like when you're in school and everyone's into something and you're into, like, everyone's into pop and you're into metal and you're that one or two metal guys. I watched a movie on Netflix called Metal Lords the other day that was all about this. It was actually really quite fun. It's just, sometimes it's fun to be different. Sometimes it's fun to be alternative. So I'm just embracing the fact that rock isn't dead. It is just so underground that only the coolest people are listening to it.
And then the other thing that's going on too is Rick Beato, again, he did a video on this recently, and I was like, yeah, for the first time ever, there's no like music popular subculture with teenagers. That should raise alarm bells with us that want to make rock music and stuff. That now it's all video games. That's what everybody's into. Video games are really big, and music. There's music in video games, but it's kind of incidental, and it's just a weird thing because there's always been some kind of subculture from back in the 60s with the hippies and stuff, all the way through the late 2000s, early 20 teens with like the MySpace scene culture. And that was kind of really like the last big music teenage subculture that existed. But now there's not really anything. And
it's TikTok, mate. It's TikTok.
Yep.
Whatever's the popular TikTok dance. And I think we did talk about that with Mike last week as well, that's one thing, is that sometimes some of these old school tunes, and the kids think they're discovering it. Sorry, I sound so old when I say things like that, but kids think they're discovering like this new song, and then I'll be watching my child watching something on YouTube Shorts or something. I'm like, why are they playing an ABBA song? And they're like, oh, it's his latest craze. Everyone's dancing to Waterloo. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. So maybe that's how we get back in there. We all release our music to TikTok and do crazy TikTok dances, and then maybe we can get it back.
Then you get on the TikTok.
Go do that. Well, if you release with Distro, I know DistroKid aren't our sponsor, it's BandLab for this one, but DistroKid are another sponsor of this channel, and they do release to TikTok. So there you go, get your music out there. Link in the description to DistroKid. There you go, DistroKid. Get an extra plug in there. We've got a couple more topics to go here. We only got 9 minutes left, and we do keep to the time on this show. It's a 1 hour, and then we blow the whistle and we're done. So if you do have questions, a weird time to ask this. I should have asked this up the front, but if you got any other questions about any of the topics we've raised or anything at all that you'd like to ask myself or Thomas, you got 9 minutes left to do that as we go through. And if you are having fun,
I do want to say real quick before I forget,
yes,
because Jade had asked the question earlier about, I did a show recently on FL Studio, and she had asked if I was planning on doing more of those. I think I'm going to try to do some more. And because I realized there were features in FL Studio that I totally missed, like Gross Beat and a couple other ones that are really awesome, and I didn't even talk about them. So I really do need to do at least like one follow up. It's just it's just a matter of finding the time to do it. But yeah, I do intend to do that. So I wanted to answer that for Jade.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you for doing that. And if you search Thomas Christ FL Studio, you'll find his recent stream there. Look, the old Fruity Loops. I know I don't troll people on many things, but I do troll when I get usually. Whoop, I've got rid of Tom. Usually young rappers that are just like, oh man, GarageBand is so lame. FL Studio is where it's at. It's lit. And I'm just like, oh, you prefer Fruity Loops? More power to you, sunshine. That's great. And I don't think they like it because I think they deliberately named Fruity Loops FL Studio to have a bit more appeal with the young folks. So I deliberately call it Fruity Loops just to be a muckraker. So it's fun. All right, I reckon we can squeeze at least one more topic in here, and I actually want to jump to this one. We've got some others, but we'll just have to have you back on the show and keep those for the next time. But interestingly, and for creators out there, and for those that are part of this community, demo recordings. So back in the day, you probably did this, Thomas, and I certainly did it. You made a demo. You did a demo tape or a demo song because that was like your version of the song to sort of shop around or to show people or to play to people or to give to a venue if you wanted to play a gig because they're like, hey, check out my demo. And in 2022, though, we kind of record everything in our digital audio workstations anyway. And I, for one, have found my demo recordings just merge and morph into my final recordings. What is your approach? Do you still do a demo of a song and then kind of scrap it and start again, or is your process more hybrid these days?
Yeah, no, I don't think I've ever really done demos at any point.
There you go.
I've always my approach has always been to just kind of start building it, and maybe there are points along the way that are kind of stopping points where you take a look and see where you're at, and maybe you print out just a mix or something to listen to. But I keep going with that original thing, and maybe things need to be recorded, then I'll re-record them. Maybe stuff from the original, from where I started, will make it all the way through to the end. So yeah, there's no real like, here's the demo, and now I'm
Yeah.
gonna restart the whole process again and do the real version now. So
Very cool, and look, that may be because I think you've been in digital pretty much all your recording career. Did you do any analog stuff early on, or is it mostly digital from the start?
well, analog in terms of, I had a mixer that was hooked up to a cassette deck. So that was my
Nice.
analog, and everything that I did for my first 3 albums was all done live, all in one take, because I had a mixer with keyboards hooked up. I would get the drum beats off the Casio keyboards, the old school garage band basically, and I would play bass line in one keyboard and a lead line on another keyboard, and I had a headset microphone. I would sing at the same time, and it all went into. But what was cool was everything ended up digital from those early recordings, those first 3 albums of mine, because I had a mini disc recorder. So it would go from that mixer into mini disc recorder. But before that, there were some like just kind of figuring things out that I did on tape.
Yeah, cool. Because I honestly think that that's kind of where my move. Because I started recording in the sort of mid '90s, and I'm like rediscovering some of this stuff because I'm kind of going back and being nostalgic and doing these happy hours in the mid '90s, and I'm finding demo tapes that I did then, and I think because of the nature of a 4-track recorder, you
Yeah.
literally had to go over your old stuff. So there was no recording, 12 or 16 tracks and then, just re-recording a couple of them, because by the time you got past your first 4 tracks, you were recording over. You were overdubbing onto the other tracks. So you kind of had to make a commitment at that point. So I think that's probably changed. I think moving into the digital world has changed a lot of the need to do a demo recording, because and the cool thing is you can record, and if you record a scratch vocal, back in the day, if you recorded a scratch vocal and then overdubbed a guitar and then a bass and then some drums and then some backing vocals, by the time you got to there, not only was the quality terrible, which weirdly people are trying to get now. And again, all the tape hiss plugins and the warble plugins and the vinyl scratch plugins. I'm like, we railed for years to try and remove this stuff. Now we're adding it back in, but that's just an old man rant for another day. But I think you couldn't actually get that. Whereas these days, I think that treat your demos as if, like, don't worry about it, but treat them as if anything you record in them could go into your final mix, because the amount of times that I've recorded a scratch vocal or a scratch guitar and it's made it all the way through to the final master is amazing. So I think these days I would treat your demos, like, my personal advice is treat your demo as if it's going to be the finished product, and then if it's not right, well, then you can re-record that. But again, because we're in digital world and you've got at least 32 tracks, if not more, depending on the DAW you're using, I think we're in a good place, just personally.
Yeah, and of course, back in the day, you used to have to shop your demo around to different record labels and stuff. And now
Yeah,
we have like DistroKid, we can just shoot it out and get it on all the major platforms and stuff. And so we don't really need to do that anymore.
it is true. It is very, very true. We've got about 3 minutes left. Final question from Gary O'Sullivan. Pete, are you going to try and pick up one of those Casio PG 380 guitars? No, I've had a bit of I've looked online for one of the OG guitars, the old red ones. I forget the
Oh
model
yeah,
number, but those guitars from the 80s, like the original ones, but they are selling for ridiculous amounts of money. So yeah, but
vintage
what?
gear. Vintage
Oh,
gear is big these days, and it's
it is.
expensive.
It is huge and it is expensive and it's not worth it. But well, for me anyway. But maybe one day, if anyone wants to buy me a present, then feel free to buy me a keytar. I don't usually accept things that people want to send me, but if anyone wants to buy a keytar and send it my way, you're more than welcome to do that.
Well,
Um,
Patreon. There you go.
there you go. See, look, doing his moderator duties as well. Yes, coming. Yes, thank you again, Thomas. This has been these topics have been awesome. You suggested some amazing stuff to talk about, and hopefully, folks watching live or if you're catching the replay, you've enjoyed us ranting about these and sharing our opinions. But we want to hear from you what your opinions are. So if you're watching on the replay, do go down and leave yourself a comment. There is a button that looks like that. I'll do the mic joke. You can press the thumbs up or press the thumbs down button twice because it does the same thing. No, but if you want to leave any comments, leave your thumb love down below. Thank you everyone who has been here live. We'll do a quick run through. Clayton Von Kluge, Doug Kidder, Joe and Barry Glenn. Gary Hubb says if the Penguins beat the Rangers, is Pete on the Rangers? Yeah, we won't talk hockey, but yes, tomorrow will be the potentially the last game of that series. Thank you Trey Verde, Clayton Von Kluge. Thank you Frigsy Guzzo of Oz, Mark Bro, Tremor Bear, Russ 8889, Wayek. Oh man, it's like the All Stars. We've got Doug Kidder. Thank you everyone for being here, and if I've missed you, it's not because I don't love you, it's because there's too many people saying too many things. Where would you suggest folks go to check out all the cool things that you are doing on the interwebs, Thomas?
I would suggest they go to youtube.com/Thomas Christ, and that'll take you right there to the YouTube channel. And of course, on Wednesday, do You Rock at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then on Friday, I'm moving Thomas Christ live an hour later, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Just trying a new time and see if we can get some more folks in there. So check it on out.
Very cool indeed. Go over, subscribe, watch the shows, and check out all of the back catalogue of cool videos over there on Thomas Christ. Now it is time for everyone to jump on over. Thomas and myself will probably be there as well, I'm sure, after we have a quick chat here. Jump over to Mike and Creative Source for Fix My Mix, episode 15. It's about to start right now, so the live fun doesn't need to stop. Thank you so much, Tom, for being here today. Thank you for being an amazing moderator on the channel, and congratulations on all of your success. On behalf of my guest, Thomas Christ, please be kind to yourselves this week, folks. Be kind to others. Keep creating, and we'll see you next time. Bye.